Which players have risen the most in dynasty value over the last month? We're talking about that in today's video. As always, give us a like and subscribe. It will really help us out. Also, you can join our Discord. Link is in the description on how to do that. And we'll answer whatever questions you have in there. It's a way to support us. And again, we'll help you try and win your championship, whether in redraft or dynasty trade talks. Hopefully put together some listener leagues if possible. But again, at the very least, like and subscribe. It takes little to no effort to do it, and it helps us out a lot. I made one of these videos a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago or so, talking about the biggest risers in Dynasty in terms of value over the last 30 days, according to keeptradecut. And I kind of want to do this every month, the first of every month. Today's July 1st that I'm recording this. So we're looking at the players, according to keeptradecut, that have risen the most in value since June 1st, essentially. Now, keeptradecut, it's not a perfect website, but it does give you at least a starting point on how people and how the community is feeling about a certain player. We're starting off with the quarterback position here, and we're starting off with Mr. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco going from the QB6... the 60, it's a QB 53, so he's driven 7 spots over the last month, over the month of June. You see his numbers last year. We all know he was awesome. When he took over, he was QB 3 in points per game, averaging almost 22 points per game and 4 point per passing touchdown. And I made a couple videos, like the best picks in a dynasty startup, and Joe Flacco was one of those in round 17 or 18. Where it's like, why is this guy falling so far? Like, he's backing up. Yeah, he's a backup quarterback, but he's backing up Anthony Richardson, a player who got hurt like 3 times last year in 4 games, right? Like, I want the backup to Anthony Richardson. One, because Anthony Richardson, we don't know if he can stay healthy. I hope he does. I love the guy, and I think he will. But there's a chance that maybe he just always gets beat up, always misses some games. And 2, Joe Flacco was awesome last year, as you can see. And, he's going to go into the Colts offense with Shane Steichen, right, who knows how to run an offense, who was making Gardner Minshew, like, relevant last year in terms of just, like, a QB3 for a Superflex team. So, obviously, this is for Superflex, but Gardner Minshew last year was QB 16 from weeks 7 to 18. Weeks 7 to 18, use QB 16. That's a QB3 that you can plug in during bye week. So I think it's a little crazy. If Joe Flacco's out there on waivers, go out and get him. I picked him up on one of my teams in waivers. Every backup quarterback in Superflex should be rostered, especially these ones where we kind of know what we're going to get from them. We know we're going to get productive play from Joe Flacco. Next up is Tyrod Taylor, moving from QB 67 to 59. Big jump for him. Not 100% sure why, but again, he's in there to me with someone like a Joe Flacco, where I want to roster the backup quarterback of how old is Aaron Rodgers now? A 41-year-old. Just pulling that up. Of a 40-year-old quarterback who's coming off an Achilles injury. I want the backup to that player, especially if I have Aaron Rodgers. But even if I don't, in a Superflex league, I want the backup to a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. So Tyrod Taylor, we know what we're going to get from him. We're going to get like solid top 15 to 20 quarterback play if we get him. But it's not even about what he gives you on the field. It's about the value. If you have Tyrod Taylor and Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, you can sell Tyrod Taylor and get some value for him. Or you can use him if you need him because you had Aaron Rodgers or something like that. So, you see what you're going to get from him. He's going to give you 200 to 250 yards passing when he starts. You look at the games last year, he threw for 200 yards, games he started and played the entire game. 200, 279, 319, 297. So he was averaging over 250 yards passing last year. 2 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1-1. He's also going to give you 20 yards rushing or so, which don't underestimate what 20 yards rushing means. He averages in his career almost 25 yards rushing. Last year he averaged 18 yards rushing. Don't underestimate that. 20 yards rushing is half a touchdown in 4 point per passing touchdown. So Tyrod Taylor needs to be rostered if he's out there on waiver wires, especially if you have Aaron Rodgers. You need to go pick him up. Skylar Thompson's the last one for our quarterbacks here. He's the last quarterback ranked on Keep Trade Cut. He's from 79 to 71. Not a whole lot to talk about here, except for the fact that I want the backup quarterback to the Miami Dolphins. Pretty simple as that, right? I want the backup quarterback, whoever that's going to be. I still think it could be Skylar Thompson. He could beat out Mike White. So, maybe he's a player to throw on. He's like one of the rare QB3s that I want to roster right now on July 1st. Because if training camp comes and he wins the backup quarterback job, then I want him on my team because he's on Miami. And no matter the quarterback that plays there, they're going to put up solid numbers, in my opinion. I mean, you just look at 2022 for Skylar Thompson. He didn't have great numbers, but he was a rookie, right? And you look at him like in that playoff game, he threw for 220 and a touchdown, right? So it's like, do I think Skylar Thompson can come in and throw for 225 yards and a touchdown and a half per game? I do. So he should be rostered as well. Moving on to the running backs. The running back market, in terms of moving up, has been pretty active over the last month or so, which is funny because we are in the dead zone. Like nothing's happening between June 1st and July 1st except for OTAs or a contract signing like we have with Rhamondre Stevenson here, moving up from running back 23 to running back 17. You see his numbers last year, 10.6 points per game, which was good for 30th best in half PPR points per game. I will mention that in 2022, he was a top 12 running back in half PPR, I believe. That was his best year. Just double checking that. He was RB 14 in points per game in 2022. This one's interesting because why did we not like Rhamondre Stevenson? Why do we maybe still not like him? But why was he down there at RB 23? It's because, one, he didn't really produce last year, was a disappointment, and two, he's on the Patriots. None of those things have changed, right? None of those things have changed in June in the offseason, right? He hasn't played better, and he's still on the Patriots, but he did get a contract extension, and so we bump him up, right? It's kind of funny just how we react to these things. I get it. It's also, part of the reason also is maybe they show you that they like him and they want, that they believe in him. And so now that you have some confidence in him from a team, you're more willing to buy in. But we do have to keep in mind, and I like Rhamondre Stevenson. I kind of look at him as a low-end RB2 to mid RB2 potential, maybe top 15 potential. He's going to be on a bad offense. And for that reason, he's not going to have a lot of touchdown opportunities. He's not necessarily super explosive. So I don't know if he can score, like if he's going to be scoring from 15 yards out regularly. He averaged 4 yards a carry last year, 4.5 in his career. But we do have to keep in mind, he's still on the Patriots, who are potentially going to be starting a rookie quarterback for a decent portion of the season, if not the whole season. So the offense could struggle a bit. Now, the offense could also be good. It could be a Houston, Texas situation where, we didn't have any expectations for the Texans last year, especially with CJ Stroud as the starter, and they became one of the best offenses in the league, right? We could have that situation, right? New coaching staff and everything. So I still kind of view Rhamondre as the same before he even got the contract. I don't look too much beyond 2024 with him. Now, I do in the sense of, okay, I think he's going to be on the Patriots for the next couple of years, but I don't in the sense of like, well, what does that mean in terms of production? Miles Sanders is the perfect example of a team that went out and paid a guy and he didn't meet expectations. And now Miles Sanders is worth nothing, right? What if that happens to Rhamondre Stevenson? It's possible. It's possible. So still like him. If you want to capitalize on him as the RB17, if someone's willing to pay you that value, I don't hate it. I really don't hate it. Alvin Kamara is another one here. Keep trade cut, moving up 4 spots from 29 to 25, RB25. You see his points per game last year, 17.6 points per game. Good for 4th best. The dude caught 75 passes in 12 games, right? He missed the first 4 or 5, 12 or 13 games, right? Alvin Kamara is in that range of running backs where we overvalue age on both sides, right? On both sides. We overvalue young players and we overvalue older players. He's 29. He's going to be 29 years old this year. I understand. I still think Alvin Kamara can give you top 5 to top 10 RB per game potential. because he catches the ball. And that's so valuable. You would think with these numbers here that our Alvin Kamara was averaging 100 yards rushing per game or something, right? He was averaging 53 rushing yards per game. He only scored 6 touchdowns. Why? How can you be RB4 averaging 53 yards per game rushing and a half a touchdown a game, essentially? 1 touchdown every 2 games. It's because he had how many? 36 yards per game receiving and 75 catches. And that's not going to go away, guys. He's averaged that basically the last 3 years, over almost 30 yards receiving per game. He's had 47, 57, 75 receptions a game. He's averaged about 3.5. And then last year, almost 6 receptions a game. Now, do I think he'll average 6 receptions a game? No. But I think he's going to average 4.5 receptions a game, right? And he doesn't need to be efficient on the ground. He hasn't averaged over 4 yards a carry in 3 straight years, and he's still putting up numbers. This is where we overvalue age in this range, right? Guys like Jalen Warren is ahead of Alvin Kamara, and I understand it, but I understand because it's because of age, though. It's because Jalen Warren is 3 years younger. But let me ask you this. Would you rather 1 year of a running back giving you RB5 in points per game and total points, or 3 years of a running back giving you RB20 in points per game? The answer is the running back that's giving you top 5 points per game over the course of a season, because that's the difference maker. I can find another running back to give me RB20, RB25 in points per game. Year to year, I can find one of those guys. Week to week, I can find one of those guys. I cannot find guys that are going to give me top 5 potential. Alvin Kamara has that. Brian Robinson, from RB31 to RB26. This one's tough, I'll admit. I don't really know what to make of Brian Robinson. So last year he was RB22 in total points. And as you can see there, he was RB20 in points per game in half PPR. Actually, that's wrong. He was RB21 in half PPR. And I just don't know what to make of him, how they're going to use him. I'm always a little wary of running backs who, have been productive, but they're not difference makers. They're not elite athletes. They're not amazing players, right? And a new coaching staff comes in and what they think of them. Because if you're not Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs or someone like that, a new coaching staff comes in and they say, hey, we want our guy to come in and do what fits our system, right? Brian Robinson last year was fine. He played 15 games. He had 1,100 total yards and 9 touchdowns. Surprisingly, he had 36 catches. I don't think we expected that, and averaged over 10 yards per reception. I don't see it really getting much better than what he had last year. About 200 to 220 touches is like best case scenario, in my opinion. He's probably going to average close to 4 yards a carry. And I don't see him averaging over 10 yards per reception. So unless you think Washington's offense is going to be amazing and score a bunch and he's going to get double-digit touchdowns, I don't necessarily see him kind of repeating last year. But I will say, if you can get him for like RB31 value, I don't hate it. It's just kind of like, I don't really know. Austin Eckler's gonna be there, so I think he's gonna take a lot of receptions away from Brian Robinson. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is a rushing quarterback, which maybe can help the run game, but it also limits it a little bit as well in terms of its upside. So there you have it, guys. Moving on to the last running back here is Jerome Ford, moving up from 42 to 38. Averaged 11.3 points per game last year as the RB26. If you needed like 10 to 12 half PPR points last year, Jerome Ford was your guy. Jerome Ford was absolutely your guy. From if you just look at like from the bye week 6 on, 10.1, 16.4, 4.4, 10.2, 11.4, 10.9, 9.9, 12.7, 10.7. He did that in like 6 straight weeks of just like, here's your 10 points, here's your 11 points, and thank you very much. I kind of like Jerome Ford again as just like a player that I think you can use like you can tier down to, you can get nice pieces for and acquire Jerome Ford as kind of like a throw-in, because people don't really think highly of him. And, he's going to give you just solid running back production, which you could use for your team to kind of get you through the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, especially with Nick Chubb. Maybe he's going to be back, but there's a good chance he's not back. There's a good chance he's not even himself. And even if Nick Chubb is back, I don't think people realize this, but from weeks 11 on, Jerome Ford played over 60% of the snaps once. And from basically the entire season, he had over 65% of the snaps once. So, I think Jerome Ford is still going to get 45 to 50% of the snaps, even with Nick Chubb back, just because that's how the Browns kind of operate with Stefanski and this iteration of the Browns. There was games where he was only getting, 12, 13 touches, and he was still giving you those 10, 11, 12 half PPR points per game. So even if Chubb's back, I still think he could be kind of like a flex play in a little bit of a deeper league. Wide receivers, DK Metcalf. From wide receiver 22 to wide receiver 18. Not a whole lot to talk about here. I think he's appropriately valued. Metcalf at one point in the middle of the 2020 season was like wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. And he hasn't really lived up to that hype, right? I know 2021, obviously his 2020 season was good. His 2021 season was also pretty good. I think, he was wide receiver 21 in points per game. He was wide receiver 27 in 2023 in points per game, and he was wide receiver 20 last year. So he's been a low-end wide receiver 2, basically, which I think we think of him as a little bit more because it's freaking DK Metcalf, and he's awesome, right? I have high expectations for DK Metcalf. I think this team, this season, team's going to be throwing the ball a lot more. It's no longer the Pete Carroll Seahawks where they want low passing volume, even when you have Russell Wilson and Metcalf and Lockett. I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more, 70% of the time. And I think DK Metcalf, the offensive coordinator was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies last year. And he's coming over to Seattle. And, he produced, obviously it's college, it's different, but he had 3 guys. Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan. Odunze was the top 10 pick. Jalen Polk was the top 40 pick. And McMillan was a 3rd round pick. He had 3 guys go in the draft in the top 3 rounds. I think Metcalf's going to fill that Odunze type of role. So if he runs the same scheme as he did at Washington, which obviously it's going to be a little bit different because you're in the NFL, but, it can still translate over. Man, Metcalf could see a huge, huge, huge boost. We could see the best season from DK Metcalf. He's still only 26 years old, right, this year. He's still young. He's still a beast. He's the biggest touchdown threat, I think, on that team, even though he hasn't had double-digit touchdowns the last 2 years. So I like Metcalf. I think he could have a top 12 wide receiver season. Amari Cooper, from 44 to 40. Amari Cooper is still an incredible value, in my opinion. He's still an incredible value. Just seeing where he is ranked around some guys, he's right there with Adonai Mitchell, Deontay Johnson, Christian Watson, Terry McLaurin. Give me Amari Cooper over all those guys. Yeah, over all those guys. Amari Cooper, yes, he's 30 years old. He'll play this season as a 30-year-old wide receiver. 30-year-old wide receivers can still put up really good numbers. He just turned 30, by the way. They can still put up amazing numbers, good seasons. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, guys like that, right? Amari Cooper last year. Now, if you just go and look at his raw numbers, Amari Cooper last year was wide receiver 17 in points per game and wide receiver 18 in total points. You're like, okay, so he's a low-end wide receiver too. Amari Cooper last year, if you go and look at the numbers that he put up when he had a competent quarterback throwing him the ball, either Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco, he was averaging almost, I think it was 17 half PPR points per game. The Dorian Thompson-Robinson games, the PJ Walker games, and then there was the one game, I forget the guy, the the other quarterback that was been a journeyman and he's just not very good. If you take those games out, which is like 5 of his games that he played, he averaged 17 half PPR points per game, which was only 2 players were better than that. CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill. That was tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was literally wide receiver 3 in points per game last year. Amari Cooper, when he had Deshaun Watson or Joe Flacco throwing him the ball. And I know people are afraid about Deshaun Watson. You look at Amari Cooper's numbers over the last 2 seasons when Deshaun Watson plays basically the entire game. I think it's like 11 games. And he's basically on pace for like 13, 14 half PPR points per game. And what that means historically, if you average about 13 to 14 half PPR points per game, you're a top 12 to top like 14 at worst wide receiver per game. So Amari Cooper to me is a huge value. I still think he has 2 more years of being a top 15 to 20 wide receiver. And this year I think he has potential to be a top 12 guy. I really do. And that's not even saying like, what if Deshaun Watson's just better, right? There's always that opportunity. Josh Downs, wide receiver 58 to 53. Not a whole lot I want to talk about here. You know, he was wide receiver 58 last year. He did have a little bit of a stretch there where you're getting excited. I just don't know with this Colts offense what the target share is going to be with Anthony Richardson as the quarterback. I really don't know. Is it going to be low volume of passing and a lot of it's going to go to Michael Pittman? Now you have Adonai Mitchell there. Like Josh Downs could be the 3rd most targeted player on this team. So if you want to buy into him because you like him, go ahead. But I'm not too optimistic about his fantasy future. Cedric Tillman is an interesting one. He's moved up from wide receiver 108 to 97 because of the news, essentially, that he's going to be it's going to be Amari Cooper and Cedric Tillman out wide and Jerry Jeudy in the slot, right? So that's exciting to see. I liked Cedric Tillman coming out of college last year. I liked him more than his teammate Jalen Hyatt. Cedric Tillman, that is. He didn't do anything last year, obviously. He was a 3rd-round pick, a very early 3rd-round pick, by the way. He was the 10th pick in the 3rd round, I believe. So he was a very early 3rd-round pick. Obviously didn't do much last year. Only played in he played in 14 games, but just didn't really produce much, as you can see by his numbers. So now he's going to be out there. If he is truly the second outside receiver, then that means he's probably going to play 85% of the snaps for the team. And generally, players who do play that much are actually they're going to put up some numbers. But I will caution you a little bit that just because you're out there 85% of the time doesn't automatically mean you're going to put up massive numbers. Alec Pierce for the Colts last year played essentially every game. He played every game last year, and only once did he fall under 90% snap share. Only once. He had one game where he played 74% of the snaps. Everything else was 90 or more, including 1, 2, 3, 4, including 4 at 100%. And he put up 514 yards and 2 touchdowns. So just because you're out there all the time, don't fall for it. Like it means he has to be productive. It doesn't mean you have to be. We get these guys every year. There's always a few guys every year that are out there playing because they fill a role for a team. They can stretch the field, or they can run block, right? Or they can play on the outside, and the team doesn't have another receiver that can play on the outside. They fill a role for the team, which is why they're out there. Actually, one more wide receiver is Bub Means. Bub Means here. I made a video on him. I've been making these, dynasty deep stash videos where I kind of look into the profile of some, rookie players and whether or not we should be stashing them. Bub Means has increased dramatically from wide receiver 180 to 118. So obviously this is still a very deep stash. He's been getting some hype in OTAs. Tyrod Means, by the way, maybe in the database, that's his real name is Tyrod Means. Maybe that's if you're searching for him, it might come up as Tyrod. But Bub Means has been making some hype in OTAs. He's a 5th-round rookie draft pick. Again, if you want more details, check out the video that I made about him. Bub Means, that is. I go into more of his college production, his analytical stuff. And what I'll say about him is that, in my opinion, so you have Chris Olave, obviously, who's going to play all over the field. You have Rashid Shaheed, who he can play on the outside, Rashid Shaheed, but he can also play in the slot. And he kind of has the role, right? He has his role for the Saints is that field stretcher role. And so whether he's on the outside or as a vertical slot, I think he'll probably play as a vertical slot, Rashid Shaheed. So basically what that comes down to is, in my opinion, there's three guys that are fighting for that X receiver position for the Saints. You know, that outside receiver that plays like Alec Pierce, 90% of the snaps on the outside, can win on the outside, while Olave moves around and while Shaheed stretches the field. That's Cedric Wilson, who they brought in. By the way, Cedric Wilson is a 29-year-old player who is going into his sixth year in the NFL, whose best year is 600 yards. I'm not too worried about Cedric Wilson. A.T. Perry, who I liked coming out of college. I knew he was a project. He was a fifth-round pick last year, flashed like in a game last year. I still like A.T. Perry. But he is a fifth-round rookie, and Bub Means just could be better than him. I can acknowledge that. And then there's Bub Means. So those three players, and maybe Equanimous St. Brown. But to me, it's Cedric Wilson, A.T. Perry, and Bub Means. One of those three is going to play the X outside receiver and be on the field a lot for the Saints. It could be Bub Means. And if he does, he's going to have some value. So that's what I'll say about him. I'll finish up this video talking about three tight ends. Tyler Conklin moves from tight end 41 to 34. Tyler Conklin, if he's the starting tight end for the Jets, could have a decent season. Every year we get tight ends that come out of nowhere and put up a top 12 season every year because the tight end position is so volatile and it's kind of a low bar to get to tight end 12 in points per game, right? So all you need to do is have like a plus touchdown year or 600 yards and 8 touchdowns and you're going to be a top 12 tight end. Tyler Conklin could be one of those guys. You look at it the last 2 years, he's already has the receptions and the yardage to get there with the Jets. 2022, 58 catches, 552 yards, 3 touchdowns. Last year, 61 catches, 621 yards, 0 touchdowns. Literally all he's missing is touchdowns. He was tight end 25 in points per game last year, right? Tight end 25. If he scores, and in total points, he was tight end 20. If he scores 3 more touchdowns, guys, 3 more touchdowns, he jumps from tight end 20 in total points to tight end 12. He literally jumps tight end 20 to tight end 12. He scores 3 more touchdowns. This offense should be better with Aaron Rodgers. And think about the Jets. You have Garrett Wilson and who? Okay, we have Mike Williams. The guy needs to stay healthy. Okay, we have a rookie in Malachi Corley, who I like, but is a rookie third-round pick. We have Xavier Gibson, who was undrafted last year, rookie, or was he? Maybe he was drafted. I think he was undrafted rookie last year. Yeah, undrafted rookie last year as your wide receiver 3. This team needs a consistent second option or even third option, and Tyler Conklin potentially could fill that role. So he could catch 6-7 touchdowns, still put up 600 yards, and be a top 12 tight end easy. Colby Parkinson from tight end 43 to tight end 39. In case you are wondering, Colby Parkinson is on the Los Angeles Rams. Colby Parkinson is interesting as well. Obviously he's never done anything really in his career. 2.9 points per game last year with the Seahawks. Right as where we stand right now, the depth chart for the Rams for the tight end position is Tyler Higbee, Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen. Well, Tyler Higbee had a ACL, a bad knee injury in the playoff game last year in January. So he could miss he could be put on the PUP to start the year. Colby Parkinson, if he is in Tyler Higbee's role, is going to put up the same amount of points as Tyler Higbee did last year, guarantee it. He's going to give you, Tyler Higbee last year, 50 catches, 500 yards, 2 touchdowns. Colby Parkinson can easily do that. And that's going to be at least streamable. Guys, don't overvalue tight ends too much in non-tight end premiums. Even in a tight end premium, they still get a little bit overvalued. But I won a tight end premium dynasty league last year, starting Tyler Higbee every single game last year, except for the week he was on bye. Because I have stacked at everyone else, and everyone else overvalued tight ends, took them higher in the startup draft, and I just got value after value after value and made up for it in other positions. So, Colby Parkinson, Tyler Conklin. These guys could, we're not valuing them even as top 30 tight ends. These guys could easily come in and put up a top 12 season. I wouldn't be surprised. Hayden Hurst is another one of these guys. Now, he's a little bit more sketchy, as you can say, just because he did have that major, kind of a scary injury last year where I forget what it was, but he was having some brain issues and it was pretty scary. So, like, is that still lingering? I don't know. But he does reunite with Greg Roman, who was on the Ravens when they drafted him. I believe Greg Roman was the coordinator, but he played with Greg Roman, at least in 2019, as his offensive coordinator for the Ravens. And again, we've seen a couple years of Hayden Hurst put up 50, 60 catches, 500 yards. Chargers also are a team where it's like, well, who's going to catch passes for him? The tight end in a Greg Roman offense is going to catch passes. And whether that is, Will Dissly or Parham or Hayden Hurst, maybe it's Hayden Hurst. So there you have it, guys. That is Dynasty Risers over the last month. I'll be doing these every month at the first of every month. And I'm excited to do that. I'm excited for football season. Again, like and subscribe. Catch you guys all in the next video.